Welcome back, guys. This is Ted with Forward the Line. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Because COVID is back in the news again. Why not the media machine, the narrative machine go burr? But please like and follow if you would be so kind. And check us out on X at Forward the Line. And let's get into this because a new COVID variant, NB181, is starting to spread in the United States. What are its symptoms? Who cares? Because COVID is just like the flu at this point, and they want us to be scared because the media loves their fear porn. They absolutely want you to live in your house and lock your door. They want you to call out of work. They want you to wear a mask at all times, even alone in your car. And they want you to be afraid because Granny is going to die. Just wait. Just wait. There's about 20 cases in the United States right now, as of the writing of this article, which was a couple days ago. And it is a offshoot of the Omicron variant. And guess what? This one actually did come from China, according to the official narrative, which we all know has been the real narrative the entire time when there was a COVID manufacturing lab where they made coronaviruses right next to a wet market or something down the street. But the point is it came from the same city that they said it did, and there's a lab there. You guys all know that by now. You know that's the real story. They still won't admit it because they put all their stock in the wet market theory. COVID had been a ringer for them for ratings. It'd been a ringer for them for incoming money because the largest contributor, one of the largest, if not the largest contributor to mainstream media advertisements is, you guessed it, the big pharma companies, especially Pfizer and Moderna. So of course they covered it up. Of course they wanted people to go get it. And as a matter of fact, 81% of the country, 81%, almost 300,000 people, 300 million people, excuse me, in the United States received at least one dose of the COVID vaccine. Boy, did they make their money. Boy, did they make their money. And guess what, too? It was guaranteed money because it wasn't like the product was actually good, nor did they have to make it good. They just had to make something because that's guaranteed money. That's not free market money. That's not sales and quality of goods money. That is government money. And they were guaranteed it. So, in order to justify the billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars that went to Big Pharma, oh, they had to make sure everybody got it. And they used the narrative of it's going to kill grandma, so you need to go get it. And Biden had the balls to say, if you didn't get the vaccine at that point in time, you were a bad person and you want people to die. He alienated an entire group of people, ended up being about 20% of the population, by saying you guys are terrible people by default. Now, you may say, well, they didn't force you to get the vaccine. No. Well, they did force the executive branch to get the vaccine. They forced the military to get the vaccine. And now we're seeing some repercussions of that. But when it comes to private industry, you are correct. They did not mandate the use of the vaccine. But the president of the United States came out and said, hey, we're trying to put something together so that we can get the private industry to mandate it. We're working on that now. Now, it never came to fruition. And of course, it was sued into oblivion in the Supreme Court that they couldn't do that, but they tried nonetheless. And what happens when the president says something, right? Look at the tariffs. Look at what happened with Trump. The moment Trump announced tariffs, like when he became president, you saw an increase in this. Not only that, but as it get closer, when he announced the idea of Liberation Day, April 1st, you saw companies, national and world global companies, move so quickly in pivoting their stocks, their inventories. They pivoted to other strategies. They were already in motion for getting ready for the tariffs. And that's what any good, savvy businessman would do, is get ready if there's something big incoming and you know about it, right? Of course they're going to do that. So in my instance, I got fired from my career. I'd been about 6 years, about 5 years into my career at a particular retail establishment that sold, I'll just say, construction goods. And let's back up. Let's go back to 2020. So for me personally, 2020, I get in to I'm working at this establishment. By the way, I never was told to go home. I worked the entire COVID, all of COVID, from the day it started to the day it ended. About 3 months in to the pandemic, I realized it was bullshit. For the first couple weeks, I wore a mask. For the first month, I wore at all times. For the first month and a half ish, I wore a mask when I was forced to, whether it was at work or in a building. After about the 2.5, 3 months mark, I realized that this is all a lie because no one around me was dying. Not one person died from COVID that I personally know. There were a few people that died with COVID of another factor, which, by the way, they recorded nationally. Anybody that died for any reason and died with COVID, we know for a fact that a lot of them, if not all of them, they marked down as a COVID death, period. So those numbers you saw were wildly inflated by millions. Okay, so that aside, I knew it was BS. No one died around me. Everybody who was around me that got sick didn't really get that sick. I mean, for me personally, I had it prior to the formal declaration of COVID, and it was bad. It was bad when I first received it, and even when it came out in China, when they had a security breach, which I guarantee you it was a safety security breach that had it. I don't think it was on purpose. They're not smart enough to do something like that, and also they couldn't secure their way into a paper bag, right? That doesn't quite make sense, but they can't do it. They don't have the capacity to have something as safe and reliable as we do here in the United States. So it is very likely that they just accidentally let it out of the coronavirus lab in Wuhan. Um so anyways, so I'm working at this place, and I was wearing a mask for a period of time, and then I stopped wearing it and all that. And then about 2021, I get a notification that in 6 months, and this is after the vaccines rolled out, about 6 months, um, if you don't get the vaccine, you're fired. Mind you, again, this is my career. Well, um, I didn't believe them at first. I didn't believe them. I said, oh, this will pass. You know, it's never going to go through the Supreme Court. This is highly illegal. It's never going to happen. Well, it stayed in the courts long enough for them to get to the 6 month mark. Now, about a month and a half prior to actually going down, when they set a specific date at this point, they'd set a date, November 1st. I tried to do as much as I could. I tried to do a religious exemption, which didn't work. They denied it. Um, and it was a good reason, too, by the way, because I had heard this, and it's very true. So, in the process of making vaccines, in a lot of instances, including the COVID vaccines, in the testing process, they do use aborted fetuses or fetal tissue in order to help test the product, which was 100% because they use it for many vaccines, many drugs, right? So, I use that. I said, I didn't know this was the case, but I found out they do this in the testing phase. So this is against my religion. Now, of course, I mean, I'm not really a diehard Christian. I'm actually more of a more agnostic slash, I believe in God. I'll just say that. I believe in God, and I believe he's real, and he's awesome and all powerful. But anyways, he they denied it, and then I tried going to a doctor, and this one's hilarious. So I went to a doctor in close to where I worked at the time, and it was a young guy, Indian guy, straight out of college, probably in his mid 20s, really about my age, to be honest with you, at the time. And I said, hey, listen, I'm trying to, like, I'm worried. I got a few issues. I'm worried about my heart. I know that this vaccine, it likely causes myocarditis. Mind you, I knew that at the time. I knew it at the time. And he said, oh, well, that's not true. And I said, well, I tried to do my own research, and I can't get a full list of what's actually in it. I can't get the research used to justify and verify it for the government. Like, there's no information that I can find. Oh, well, you just look it up. You can get the ingredients list. And I said, where? He said, oh, you get it on their website. I pulled up the website and I said, it's not here, and I can't find it. I have tried that. He said, oh, okay. Well, it's there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. And I said, you know what? I'm not comfortable with it. I don't want it. And I'm being threatened to lose my job if I don't get this experimental vaccine. And he couldn't deny that, by the way. Even though it's not really a vaccine, it's a gene therapy, he couldn't actually deny it. He said, well, it is experimental, whatever. But he said, well, how about this? Well, what if you had cancer and they had a brand new experimental drug that was brand new and we didn't know long-term effects of it? Um, are you saying that you wouldn't take that if you had cancer? And I literally said, I don't know if this is verbatim, but I literally said to the guy, I said, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. COVID and cancer are nowhere even near the same thing. By the way, this legitimately happened. I was stunned. I looked at the guy because he was serious. He had a serious look on his face. And I just thought to myself, how indoctrinated are these doctors that come out of these hospitals? How gone, how far gone are these young doctors that have been coming out of prestigious institutions? It worries me that there's an actual medical licensed physician that believes wholeheartedly every single thing they're told from an authority figure. That is disturbing. And that actually, at that time, this is off topic, but made me want to go find another doctor, maybe an older doctor that I would be upfront with and be like, look, I was told this. I got fired from my job because my career, because I didn't take this thing. And come to find out, a lot of the good doctors in my area actually closed up shop at that time, or they went pay as you go private, where they didn't deal with insurance companies because they were getting, for if you weren't doing the established narrative, they were threatening to take away your license as a doctor. So the whole thing was awful. So the point is, the elites that ran the swamp, the ultra powerful, the ultra wealthy, they used this wonderful gift that they got from China on accident to attempt to upend the entire world economy, which they did successfully, and then try and change it and adjust it to their own oligarchic, uh, you know, extremely top heavy market that's global. That's what they wanted. Klaus Schwab, the WEF, GARM, Hillary Clinton, all of them. That's what they wanted. They wanted that. They didn't get away. They didn't get away with it though. That's the good thing. We actually at least stopped that from happening. Now, 80% of the population fell for the fear. They fell for the narrative. They ended up getting something that could have actually hurt them. And we're even still having trouble actually figuring out exactly how many people were actually hurt by this thing. And of course, all the information keeps coming out that the government withheld information from us about myocarditis. Also, some of the pharmaceutical companies withheld information from the actual federal government. So these people will do anything for money and power. And just like that, I will bounce to this because the COVID vaccine was advised by RFK a couple days ago to not give it to children over 6 months old. Or excuse me, was it under 6 months? Not to give it to children. Let's just go with that. He advised from his position as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the highest position within the health field in the federal government, said, we're not going to give it to kids because they don't need it if they're healthy. Don't give it to kids and talk to your doctor. Well, as it turns out, as you can see here, just the other day, yesterday, I believe, the CDC had the fucking stones to come out and say, oh, no, 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 you can give it to children who are over 6 months old and do not have any underlying conditions. So they directly went against and contradicted not only their boss, but their boss's boss, at the very least, if not more bosses on top of that. That is so beyond swampy. It's beyond. It just shows you that even with Trump bringing these people in to try and upend the establishment swamp within the government, even still, they still remain. They still are scrambling for control, and they're running out of narrative. They're running out of choices, and it's starting to show. Because not only that, come to also find out that, boom, NBC News, FDA grants limited approval to new COVID vaccine from Moderna. Now, at least with this one, they say that ages 12 to 64 with at least one medical condition that increases the risk for COVID, severe COVID, excuse me, they can get it. And then anybody over the age of 65 and older, it's for anybody who wants it. So at least they limited it to individuals that are in a riskier category. Also, it is also limited to individuals who have only previously received a COVID vaccine, and it was granted on the FDA Friday. So, I mean, they're going to do it. And they're going to do it because the people that are still working in the FDA, even if we have people in there that more agree with this point of view, there's still some in there that they got to make their money. They got to make their money. If they turn down Moderna, then the millions of dollars they get through kickbacks, the millions of dollars they get from direct investments, that's all going to disappear. So we got to give them something, but let's at least say, okay, well, you can't give it to these people or these people or these people. So depending on how you look at it, is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. But what I will tell you is that the medical establishment, the doctors that you deal with, the nurses that you deal with, should have learned something at least from COVID, and hopefully they, when the CDC and of course RFK had both said, who ended the statement with "talk to your doctor." I really pray that all the doctors out there take it seriously and you deal with the COVID vaccine on a per patient basis. You talk to them, you know them. I assume you would because you're a doctor. I know there's some of you out there that have so many patients you can't keep up, but as a doctor, you should know your patient and you should deal with it case by case. If you have the nerve to go in there and blanket statement to all of your clients, all of your patients, and say, oh, yeah, COVID vaccine is fine, go get it. You didn't learn a damn thing from the vaccine. And that would upset me because those ideological doctors are out there. And I tell you what, I have a personal vendetta against some doctors and some nurses. Personal vendetta, metaphorically, I should say, not literally. I'm not going to go do anything to any particular person, but you know what? I'll say this: I have a vendetta against the health industry because I'm going to tell you a little story about my fiance's uh, grandmother. So in 2021, I believe, later that, it was a little earlier than that. Maybe was it 2020? Maybe it was 2020. It might have been 2020. So in 2020, her grandmother was hit by an individual in her car. Um, Come to find out that she had some damage to her lungs. Well, that lung damage was actually from long form exposure to mesothelioma or toward asbestos. And her husband dealt with asbestos working for a particular military base, right? So she ended up having the residuals from the clothes, from the atmosphere, all that good stuff. So she had scarring on her lungs. And of course, this guy hits her. And at the very least, because the guy hit her, she went to the hospital. Come to find out that it had accelerated quite a bit and she was put on oxygen. Well, I think the end of 2020, she ended up having to go in the hospital because it was getting really bad. It was accelerating very, very quickly. She was in there for about a week or two, and then they put her on hospice. During the entire time she was in the hospital, nobody was allowed to see her. Not my fiance, not her mother, not her father, nobody. Nobody was allowed in whatsoever for more than 2 weeks. She was on hospice for 3 or 4 days. No one was allowed in. No one was allowed in. A day and a half before she passed away, they made an exception for her mother only to go in there in order to fill out her will. That's it. Then she wasn't allowed in for any other reason. Luckily, I believe that night she spoke with my fiance, and that was the last time she ever talked to her because a day later she passed away. After she passed, they made an exception for both of them to go in. And after I got very upset with them, they allowed me to go up with them to see her dead body. And they made a big deal about it. And they made us wear masks. It's a dead body. Unfortunately, for weeks on end, this lovely woman was in the hospital with a bunch of nurses who were busy, short staffed, forced to wear masks. And by the way, as you know, like we did with all the children, it's very difficult to remain emotionally stable when you're looking at people in a mask all day, because a lot of the interaction that we have on a day-to-day basis has to do a lot with the mouth, with the eyes, with the facial movements. It's a big part of communication. Well, unfortunately, she was in there for weeks basically dealing with aliens because you couldn't see their faces. They were just stone-faced all the time. What a miserable, miserable way to go. And we allowed this to happen. Where were the men to stand up against this? There are some out there, don't get me wrong. But why weren't there more of us to say, hey, stop this. This is ridiculous. This isn't the Spanish flu. This isn't the plague. What are we doing? There was barely any of us that stood up and said something, and we allowed this to happen. And like I said, not only the medical establishment should have learned something from this, but we all should have learned something from this. How bad this was, how disgusting this was, and the impact on the children for decades to come. The little babies, the little kids who didn't properly learn. Hopefully, their mother and father spent some time without a mask on, but there's definitely some parents out there that wore a mask 24/7, even around each other, even in their bedroom, even while they were screwing. They wore masks. I mean, you know it to be true. But those poor kids weren't allowed to go to school, couldn't couldn't get the person to person connection from each other. We stunted an entire generation, and we stunted each other. We reported each other to the authorities. Remember, a woman was arrested in New York because she opened her business online. She had a storefront. She opened it online so she could still make money, and they shut her down. Didn't allow anybody in the store at all. Also, remember, a person was arrested for being in the ocean in California. For being in the ocean. And mind you, note the two states that I mentioned, because the worst of it were in heavy blue states. And I wonder why. And heavy blue cities. And I wonder why. The power trip from these people was never any more in history on full display for the American people. And only a handful of us stood up. And I'll give credit to where credit is due. A lot of people on this particular platform, Rumble, stood up. And I'm happy for you. And I think that's great. And we needed that. And we need more of that. And with that, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please give us a like, give us a follow here on Rumble or on YouTube. Check us out on X at Forward the Line, our website, forwardtheline.co for shirts and goodies. And as always, be happy, be healthy, get educated, stay motivated, Forward the Line.